I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year.
Yeah, that's a big goal, and it would be really cool because 93% of you would benefit from no federal income tax if this happened. This sounds absolutely amazing. It's a lot of money that Americans would save. 93% of Americans 15 years or older make less than $150,000 per year. Now, when we look at the number of income taxes paid in the state and to try to understand what some of the math behind this would be and what we would have to actually recover to be able to offset this, let's do some numbers. First of all, the top 10% of Americans pay about 75.8% of all income taxes. The top 5% pay about 65.6%, which means that top 10% pays more than 2/3, almost more than 2/3 of our taxes. It's pretty remarkable. This means the top 7% probably pays somewhere around 70% of income taxes, approximating a little bit. So, what does this mean? This means that the leftover 30% is paid by 93% of Americans. Okay, I know that sounds like a lot of numbers, and I'm gonna simplify that really quickly. I'm gonna show you this on screen right here. Sorry, my little bubble isn't aligned right now, so just ignore the little black box that's supposed to be me. Pretend I'm there. See right here? Top 10% of taxpayers, according to the taxfoundation.org. Look at the top 10% of taxpayers right here. They pay 75.8%. The top 5% pay 65, top 1% 45, right? So to figure out what percent 93% of Americans pay, we could look for the top 7%, which would be somewhere in between here. Let's just call it 70%, and assume that the top 7% of Americans pay about 70% of taxes. That means the bottom 93%, or people paying taxes on under $150,000, pay or are responsible for paying about 30% of Americans' tax revenue, income tax revenue. All right, fine. So how much is that? Well, the total bucket of tax revenue for America is about $2.2 trillion. At least that's what we saw in 2021 records, and it sort of fluctuated a little bit from there. But let's use that number for a moment, and let's apply 30% to that. That works out to about $660 billion. So we've got to come up with about $650 billion in annual recurring revenue to offset Americans making under $150,000 a year from paying taxes. Okay, how can we do that? Well, obviously we could spend less, which is attempted to be accomplished with Doge, but we're having trouble even adding up math so far on spending for more than about $20 billion of cuts. And I'm not saying what Doge is doing isn't good. It is good. Like, we want to see efficiency brought to government. Saying 20 is going to be a far cry from 660. And remember, we need 660 every single year. So an idea that so far I like more, although Doge could end up being more productive over time, let's see, we got to give him some time, it's early here, is the gold card. The gold card is interesting because it potentially raises $5 million per person who wants to immigrate to the United States and sort of buy citizenship. The problem with that is you would have to sell about 200,000 of those to raise $1 trillion. And I'm just trying to use round numbers there. Obviously, you'd have to raise a little bit less to get $660 billion. And so the question then is, how many times can we do that? Well, there are approximately 2.2 million people who live outside of the United States that have a net worth of greater than $10 million, which means if you had a net worth of $10 million, you'd have to give up half of your net worth to go to America. Let's assume they'd be willing to do that. How many of these 2.2 million people are actually going to buy the gold card? Let's say 1 in 10. That's 200,000 people. Great. That's about $1 trillion of revenue. But now what? You would need another 10% and another 10% and another 10% to come basically about every year and a half just to make it so that Americans don't have to pay income taxes when they make under $150,000. So this Lutnick proposal, while it sounds good as an ultimate solution, I don't think, and a goal, I don't think the gold card is going to get us there because there just aren't enough people that have this sort of net worth outside of America. The majority of people who have a net worth of greater than $10 million already live in America. It's like about 1 million people. 2.2 live all across the rest of the world. So on a country by country basis, the majority live in America. So they're already here. Now, of course, we could assume some of them might be green card holders. Who knows? Maybe they could pay for their citizenship. But then again, why pay $5 million for the benefit to vote? I don't know. That seems unlikely. If you already have a green card, that's really the difference, right? Voting and jury duty, because you have a permanent resident card. Now, tariffs are an interesting one. So let's do some tariff math. So the gold card idea is cool, but it's more one-time in nature. You need recurring savings annually, not like one-time DEI contracts that are cut. But I mean like every year we need to save money and cut. Okay? So what about tariffs? Well, tariffs are interesting because right now we earn about, let's see here, we earn about $88 billion on tariffs. So that's about a 2% tariff. $88 billion is a far cry from what we need to get to $660 billion. And remember, the $88 billion we collect now is stuff that we already collect, right? So we only collected tariffs of $88 billion in 2022. That works out to about 2% of trade that we import, because we import about $4.1 trillion. Any of the revenue that we want to get to offset not paying taxes under $150,000, that would have to come from an increase in tariffs above the 2% threshold. So if we want $660 billion on $4.1 trillion of imported goods, we're looking at 16% tariffs on everything. So far, we have a stock market that is selling off on the idea of 25% tariffs on cars and aluminum and steel, not everything. Computer chips, electronics, structural hardware, I don't know, screwdrivers from Germany, anything, toys from China, doesn't matter. If all of that had a tariff of 16%, you could do it. You would then eliminate income taxes for everybody making under $150,000 a year. Then the question becomes, does that come with the potential market sell-off / recession risk? What about retaliatory tariffs that actually take that $4 trillion of imports and shrink it, right? Because if $4 trillion of imports shrink to $3 trillion, well, then we actually need to tax even more, because then we do 660 divided by 3 trillion. We'd have to raise taxes from 16% to 22%. So every $1 trillion of less trade is going to lead to 6% more tariffs required to get to that $660 billion bucks. Well, that's going to lead to more retaliatory tariffs and more exporting American, anti-Americanism. So, I think what's happening here is Howard Lutnick is creating this desirable hope, but it's not even something Donald Trump campaigned on. It's just something that Lutnick is saying to try to get support. So I would argue that this no tax on $150,000 argument is very unlikely to happen. I do think that no tax on tips and Social Security are much more likely to happen. I think those have a high likelihood of happening. But I think this idea of nobody pays taxes on under 150K has a very low likelihood of happening, just on a math point of view, but also because we know the gold card doesn't give us enough recurring. We know Doge doesn't give us enough recurring at this point, especially since a lot of their cuts have been one-time in nature. So then we're relying on tariffs, and we've seen a fraction of tariffs cause massive market sell-offs. So to me, while there is hope that maybe this could work, especially if we don't go into recession and we negotiate some form of deals with other countries, it seems on the lower likely potential. I'd give it about a 5% chance. That'd be my POV, just based on these numbers. Hey, who knows? I would love to see it happen. I just think this is more likely. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll keep bringing you perspective, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.